معيش. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. I greet you all, my dearest brothers and sisters, those who are here in the masjid, those who are our guests, and everybody who is watching online with the greeting of Al-Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is a very interesting topic, inshallah tabaraka wa ta'ala, as we are commemorating the Black History Month of February. We take this chance to connect and relate to a great legacy of both Islam and America. And with not much details on my side, I know Imams want to talk a lot, but I just want to skip that. I would love to introduce to you two beautiful speakers, mashallah. I've known them over a decade. The first one is Brother Nazih Abdul Hakim. Nazih Zulkifl Abdul Hakim was the principal founder of Jamaat Ibad al-Rahman and its president for 12 years, 11 of which were consecutive from 1983 to 1994. He was project leader for establishing Masjid Ibad al-Rahman and the Durham Muslim Cemetery. Born and raised in Goldsboro, North Carolina, Nazih became a Muslim in 1979. While working as a city planner in Durham, North Carolina, and retired in 2006, he is the author of the Adhan in the Bull City, building Durham's Islamic community. He has made several major and minor pilgrimages to Mecca and Medina in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and has visited Masjid al-Aqsa in Jerusalem. He has traveled to many Muslim countries and numerous destinations in Africa, Asia, Europe, and Caribbean. He has been happily married to Ulayya Abdul Hakim since October 29, 1982, mashallah. The second speaker today, guest speaker, is Brother Ibrahim Siddiq. Born and raised in Richmond, Virginia, declared Islam in 1974, one of the first Sunni Muslims in the Durham, North Carolina area, active in Muslim Students Association on Raleigh, supported establishing of Tarbiyah Islamiyah in Raleigh area, worked in the Islamic Society of North America, ISNA, in Indiana, currently living in Saudi Arabia, previously worked as university lecturer in Imam Muhammad University in Riyadh. Much of professional career has been on training, development, and project management in the airline industry, also a certified life and business coach. Without further ado, I welcome you both. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you. Join me to welcome our guests. Marhaban wa ahlan wa sahlan.
All right.
Alaykum salam. Let me start with Brother Ibrahim. Brother Ibrahim, if you don't mind, talk to me a little bit about how was it like to grow up in Richmond, Virginia back in the 60s?
Oh,
Which was just like a few weeks ago, huh? A couple of years ago. How was it like? Put me in the picture. I came from a different society, Egypt, born and raised in Egypt, and we do have our challenges. Brother Nazih lived in Egypt for 2 years, and he knows the challenges that this society has. But it was stunning for me to know what you guys had to go through back in the 60s, and actually some of that or many of that is up until now. Put me in the picture, please.
Bismillah, I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulihi, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Thank you for this opportunity to meet and greet brothers on the far side of the United States. As Imam Amro mentioned, I was born and raised in Richmond, Virginia. I completed my high school education in Richmond before moving to Durham, North Carolina area to attend North Carolina Central University. Virginia and North Carolina, although they are states that are really next to each other, they are actually relatively different cultures. And the reason I say that is because Virginia, if you know about the history of the United States, particularly the US Civil War, Richmond specifically was the capital of the Confederate States, the insurrectionists, if you will, who separated from the US. And that legacy, even though, of course, the South lost the war, that legacy had continued in Virginia specifically and in Richmond over the generations. Growing up in Richmond, if you are familiar with the social terms of Jim Crow and, of course, segregation and this type of thing, I grew up in that era. There are many events that happened in the late 50s and the 60s in Richmond. One example, which is very striking, was that there was a county in Virginia, Prince Edward County. And at that time, the US government that's when really the impetus and the activity for civil rights for Americans of color really gained a lot of momentum. There were so many things happened, even from among the Muslims. And there was a county in Virginia, Prince Edward County. And at this time, the federal government issued a mandate that Prince Edward County had to desegregate all of their schools to allow Black children and white children to go together in school. The county itself, in defiance to the United States government, closed the school system completely. They actually shut down the school system in defiance of the government. And they said, rather than have the government tell us what to do, we're going to control. So that was a major issue. And it was one of the first episodes that I recall of this racial backlash. And as a matter of fact, it was so intense because I remember as a young boy, my father used to take us to this little amusement center on Saturdays when we went to get shop for groceries and this type of thing. And we'd go every Saturday. And after this incident happened, my father went to the gate to get us in. And the manager of this little center, of course, it was a white gentleman, just apologized to my father and said he couldn't let us in anymore. My father just came and said, we couldn't go in.
Why? Why?
Well, there was this defiance. There was this backlash, and it had spread throughout the entire state. In Virginia, in Richmond particularly, as I said, this legacy of the Confederacy and this legacy of the South was very deeply ingrained in the Richmond, Virginia society. So, out of, I guess, some type of solidarity, this thing happened. And I remember times my father, there were restaurants. You speak about Jim Crow, this type of where Blacks were not allowed to enter certain public establishments. I remember times going with my father to order food from restaurants, and he had to go into the kitchen area because he was not allowed as a Black man to walk through the front. And my father himself, he was a barber, a professional barber, and his barber shop catered only to white clientele up until the passage of the civil rights, the first civil rights law in 1964 or 1960. It was in 64. So Richmond itself was a very socially and culturally was a racially divided city. Although I grew up, from the 7th grade onward, I did attend integrated schools because that was mandated. So that gave me a different perspective. But the city itself, even until now, there's still quite a bit of tension.
That was back in the 60s. We're talking 50 years ago, not too long ago. Brother Nazir, thank you for that, Brother Ibrahim. Brother Nazir, how was it like? I saw some pictures for fountains, and there is a sign, colored.
Yes.
there are designated areas for you in transportation, in fountains. How was it like for you, Brother Nazir?
Sounds like Ibrahim had it better than me. Like I said in my book, my family is from the working poor, and I grew up in the projects. In fact, the projects were some of the best housing in our town, except for those people who were upwardly mobile, had middle class income, and bought their homes. But for my part of town, was called Webbtown. Goldsboro, North Carolina, is the home of Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, which is one of the major Air Force bases on the East Coast. It used to have B-52 bombers, but now it's mostly tactical fighter jets. And in about 1964, I think, we had one of the B-52s crashed just north of Goldsboro, and it was armed with plutonium bombs. But fortunately, alhamdulillah, they didn't detonate, or else I wouldn't be here. You know, it would have been a terrible accident. You can read about it. It was one of the really severe nuclear accidents that they had in the United States. For me, my world was kind of limited because of our poverty. My mother and father both worked. We really didn't have a good education about what the world was. You know, we didn't see a lot of other, we didn't really interact with people except who was in our neighborhood. And most of the time that's in walking distance. You know, we might run and go all over town to see what's going on, you know, to hike and see things. And in fact, the only white person that I saw on a regular basis was the manager of the housing project. And we would see white people ride back and forth like that. And then, of course, there were some stores adjacent to our neighborhoods were owned by white people. The only little black stores we had were snacks and, you know, small stuff, that drinks and whatever. And I think we had a black man who owned the cleaners. We had a black man who owned a shoe shop. And then you just had basically mom and pop snack stores. You know, you buy cookies and candies and things like that. There was a supermarket adjacent to our neighborhood. And, you know, we would go to the shop, and my parents would go to the shop. We'd go downtown, but we didn't really interact with white people that much. That's the way it was. And I got to go to school with white people when I went to junior high school. They had a program called Freedom of Choice, where they finally let us to interact with white people. And I thought it was, you know, some people thought it was, you know, I should be one of the ones going because we were poor, and, you know, it was a struggle just to have nice clothing, because at that time we had clothing we wore to school. And when we came home from school, we got out of that clothing, put on our junk stuff and hung out. And going to school with white people is really strange because we was up close and personal with them, you know. And so, you know, I had
this tension in the very fabric of the society. There was this tension in there, whether it's leading to a clash or to unrest in the way the society, the different elements of the society was dealing with each other. And I guess that's why this spirit of the rising up, you know, started coming up through Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz, and all of these. How was the spirit of rising up and asking for justice? How was it? How did it inspire you, or what would you recall from that period? And also the Muhammad Ali, I know Muhammad Ali, mashallah, I remember Brother Nazir, you told me he used to come and train next to the masjid there in the place that was adjacent to the masjid, if I'm not wrong.
No, that was the first building in the country named after him. It was part of Durham College. But at that time, you know, the white people wanted to keep us in a place, and we had to really get their permission to get out of that place. And that was so much pressure on a lot of people that our parents were drunks for the most part. My father drank all week. Well, he worked all week, but on the weekend he got drunk, okay? And it caused domestic problems. And this was throughout the neighborhood. It was very common, because why? They treated our parents like they was boys. You know, they call you boy. He's a grown man working, trying to feed his family. And they want to got their foot on your neck, you know, just trying to keep you down. And you had to really struggle to show that you were equal to, good as, or better than them. And when you got better than them, they will pull you back or put you down to keep you in your place. So that's the kind of struggle that people went through. Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, and Dr. King also was trying to help people to pull up. So, you know, it's, people can't really understand. You know, we read in the Quran about how Pharaoh, you know, punished children of Israel by killing the boys, the men. Well, that's what they did to us. Well, not like killing us, but they destroyed our spirit as men so that we would not be in competition with them, or we could not overcome their control of us.
Brother Ibrahim, what did you see in the example of Malcolm X back then, Muhammad Ali, and how was it for you? How was it received? How did it inspire you?
Well, that phase of inspiration came a bit later, because for many, particularly of our generation, Brother Nazir and I, we're pretty much in the same generation. For our generation, the Black church was the core of the Black community, regardless of the denomination, whether it's Baptist or Catholic or whatever. The Black church was the core. And I grew up in the church. My mother's father was the minister of our church. He baptized me, the whole thing. And I grew up in the church. At that time, the so-called Black Muslims in Richmond, we see them particularly on Sunday. They'd be on the street corners, and they try to sell their papers. And they would even come, yes, yeah. These were the followers of the Nation of Islam. Yes,
right.
They would sometimes wait for us after our church service and try to invite us to. They had an interesting strategy, because they would hold their meetings after the end of the regular church services, about 1 o'clock, and they would. But our elders in the church would say, you need to stay away from those people. They're dangerous, or they, stay away from those people. They don't know what they're talking about, But at the same time, being young, there was an interest, because young people are generally curious. So the name of Malcolm X, and because we were in the Black church, the influence of the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and SCLC, and Dr. King had the stronger influence in terms of the cry for civil rights and social justice in this time. So my real exposure, I would say exposure and inspiration came really after high school. In college, Muhammad Ali was in the middle of his well, not only his championship, but also his efforts to resist the draft.
He was a man on a mission.
Yes, he was. He was, and the death of Malcolm X Malcolm died in 1965. I was still in junior high school when he died. When he was assassinated. May Allah be merciful to him. So and actually being in North Carolina Central University was really when I had my first exposure to the Nation of Islam, where I was.
That is the question. If you allow me, this is the question. Sure. I want to come next. How did you find Islam? Was it offering you? Obviously, the guidance is all from Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. But did you see something in Islam? Let me give that to Brother Nazir. What did you see in Islam? Did you see some kind of hope in Islam that's or some light that's out there that you saw in Islam? How did you come to Islam in the first place?
Well, first of all, as a kid, I always wondered what the earth was. I always wondered what it was that I'm standing on. I remember when I was a young kid, the Empire State Building was the tallest building in the world. And I went out my yard and looked to see if I could see it from where I live. That's how I was kind of interested in that. But I really wanted to know what the world was about. And for some reason, I couldn't get with the life that the people were living, going to church. My mama didn't make me go to church, even though we lived across the street from her. She didn't make us go. But when I did go to Bible school and stuff like that, I would excel, but I really didn't take that in. So I didn't really get exposed to Islam until I was in the military. I got drafted, and the 1973 war between Egypt and Syria and Israel happened. They put us on World War Alert. So I started to read about this, or read about that situation. What was Islam? We had heard about the Nation of Islam, but in my little town, Goldsboro, there was none. You know, you might have some people pass through sometime, but I never saw any of them until I went to North Carolina Central University. When I first met Ibrahim there, I went to North Carolina Central. That's when I ran into it, because Durham was a hot spot for the Nation of Islam. In fact, I think they had a real big showing there. And but I really didn't get into studying about Islam until my younger brother, Saleh, used to come by and talk to me about Islam. And that was after I had gone through graduate school and things like that. And I was really interested in what the world was about. It was coming on me. I learned how to plan, you know, those kinds of things. So I just wanted to know what the world was about. So when I started listening to him, he started talking to me about the prophethood. We was watching one day a program on TV said, "In Search of Noah's Ark." So I asked him, "So y'all believe in Noah?" He said, "Yeah." So he told me about the prophethood. I said, "Wow, that was interesting." So my eyes just started opening. And then he gave me a Quran and things I started to read, you know. But then I became a little bit disturbed about what life was about, because one of the things that a lot of Black people went through was trying to understand what life was about, but we didn't have the information. We didn't have the information. They started looking at communism, socialism, whatever, all kinds of isms, all kinds of religions from Africa and other places, because we didn't have the information. And when we got the information, alhamdulillah, Allah guided some of us. And we're still going through that. We're still going through that.
MashaAllah. Brother Ibrahim, how did you find Islam? Same question. And right after that, when you first got to know about there are some greatest figures in Islam that happen to be Africans. Bilal ibn Rabah, ibn Abi Rabah, the mu'adhin of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Najashi is somebody who offered a safe place for early Muslims to make the first hijrah, actually not one, but two times that the Muslims during their time of persecution would go and resort to Al-Habasha, Abyssinia at that time. How did this, what did you find? What did you read in this?
Well, that's a very good question. And I think Nazif touched on it a little bit, because we were both at North Carolina Central in the early 70s. And after coming through the 60s, where you had this kind of openness of life, and in many cases too open, the 70s were a time because people, number one, Vietnam was closing down. So there was a lot of, even in the United States society itself was really kind of going through some type of change. I accepted Islam in 1974, and coming out of, I went to integrated education schools settings from junior high school to high school. My desire was to reconnect with the Black community. My older brother was at Howard University, which was at that time a foremost Black institution. And I didn't want to go and follow his footsteps. So I went to North Carolina Central. There, I got my heaviest exposure to Islam. For some reason, and Allah knows best why, I had an interest in Islam. For some reason, Islam and Muslim was always in. The first time I got exposed to the term Muslim was when I was in the 6th grade. And it was just a social studies lesson. And my teacher said, well, Muslims are here. And it wasn't even about religion. It was just about the cultural aspect. And then in my first year at Central, I chose to do a paper on how Islam set a precedence for bringing justice in the world. I just, anytime I saw something about Islam, I just wanted to jump on it. And that just what for me, I was not, to be honest, I'm not I've never been the type of person where I was just black on black on black on black and black only and only for black, because Allah didn't just create black people. Allah created the universe. And unfortunately, we in America as Black Americans have received the brunt of the worst treatment of humans. And that's why we have to say Black Lives Matter. But Islam is not an insulated way of life. It's a way of life that brings all people together. And what interested me more was the fact that it gives everyone a level playing field as humans in humanity. And that's what really drove me. Listening to, and one of the first books about Islam that, particularly in the American context, for many of us, was the autobiography of Malcolm X. And reading his evolution and reading how he moved from the Nation of Islam, going to Hajj, and understanding the context of what Islam really meant, it had an impact on me. And that's really what drove me. And then I had some instances in my life that allowed me to be around Muslims to the point where Allah allowed me to accept Islam, as I was able to do, alhamdulillah. So,
what did you see in the legacy of Islam, and how did it connect with you, knowing about those figures of Islam, Bilal and Najashi and many others? How did you read that?
Well, you know, the thing is, okay, I'll give you a context. If you look now in the U.S., you look now, because of the way the U.S. is set up, I mean, because of the struggles that we've gone through as a society, when a non-white person achieves something in America, that achievement is noted because he is a non-white, or he or she is a non-white person, whether he or she is Black American or Native American or Chinese or Indian or whatever. You know, the ethnic aspect comes into it. The first Black woman or the first Black man or the height. Okay, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked Bilal to make a call for prayer. You know, and when he did it, nobody said, "Oh, Bilal is the first Black muezzin." Okay, you know, there was no, even when he was insulted by one of the other companions and said, "Oh, you son of a Black woman." And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam heard about it and said, "Well, you just return to your state of jahiliyyah." And the companion put his head on the ground and said, "I will not raise until Bilal puts his foot on my head." Okay, so that context of what you look like was not evident among the Sahaba. What was evident was that we submit ourselves to the decree of Allah, and we tried our best to structure our lives to the decree of Allah. And what matters is our deeds and how we address each other. And that was really what brought me to Islam. The aspect of a Najashi showed that Muslims and Christians can work together. You know, when there is truth, when there is a basis of truth. And you even saw after 9/11 and during the wars of Iraq, you saw where Christians came and protected the mosques and surrounded around the mosques to keep people from, vandalizing, this type of thing. So that whole aspect of whether it's Bilal, whether it was Salman al-Farisi, whether it was anyone, Islam breaks those barriers of physical appearance to allow us to deal with each other as humans.
All right, so does this mean that's Islam for what it is, Brother Nazir? And we know Islam is perfect as the way of God. How do we apply Islam in our communities? And you are a community founder yourself. Does it still exist nowadays amongst us Muslims in the way we classify one another and the way we look at each other? I know these are hard questions, but how much do we embrace of Islam when it comes to areas like that? What do you think, Brother Nazir?
Okay, I'm one of the principal founders. I'm not the founder, but anyway, that's a very good question. And the thing that I'm still looking at now is that, in fact, one of the things I point out in my book is that we had a very difficult time trying to understand what Islam is, because we didn't have scholars teaching us. We had a very short list of reading materials. And a lot of times the reading materials pointing us at some particular sect or some particular political group like Muslim Brotherhood, or you had Tabligh Jamaat, all these different things coming at us. We did not have anything that really gave us Islam. We had to really find it, look for it, and then we had no one to really help us to sit through all that stuff. That's happening now, but that's been compounded by the fact that the United States brought in Muslims from everywhere. And you got all this information out there, all these different types of Muslims acting and going on. And we are just beginning to get some good scholars from the African-American community who have learned Islam and have a better understanding of it. That's starting to crystallize now. If they can stop with their peeing contest. You know, the peeing contest is who can pee the farthest, right? Stop competing against each other and start working together. All that has to be developed. So we just have to be patient about that, because it's not going to happen overnight. Mm-hmm. And that's the biggest challenge now, is that all this knowledge that we have from there, they got to learn to integrate and work with those other African American who have other types of degrees and scholarship, to help people to understand what Islam really is, to produce Muslims and not some type of sect or whatever else. You know, you have guys who are really hard, and you have guys who are really easy.
Yeah.
You have
right.
Well, we're evolving and learning, and we have our own struggles. Brother Ibrahim, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add a very brief point about what Brother Nazir made, and that is the challenge that we as Muslims in America, in the U.S. currently have been facing for at least 3 decades, at least since the 70s. Then the U.S. Has had an open immigration policy for years, which is excellent, and it's one of the few countries there where diversity is encouraged, and that has been actually a favor for the Muslims in America, not only because of the celebrities, Muhammad Ali or Malcolm X, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So I mean, even now you have Muslim women like Ibtihaj Muhammad, who was in the fencing, and Bilqis Abdul Qadir, who was the basketball. So you have this. The problem, as Nazir touched on, is not only that we did not have access to accurate information and systematic information, but also the Muslims who came to the U.S. came with their own problems, and those problems were transplanted. And we also had our own problems in America as new Muslims in America. And so you have this kind of a stew, kind of mushakka of challenges in the Muslim communities, where the message of Islam, which is really pure and is really simple, and it's not like a 10-year-old can understand. Ali ibn Abi Talib was 10 years old when he accepted Islam. So it's not really. It's not a complicated. The core message of Islam is not complicated.
Simple.
It's very, very simple. But when it's covered with a lot of other issues that have nothing to do with the real message of our relationship with Allah, we have to sift through that, as Brother Nazir really clearly pointed out. So there's still a challenge with this now.
Yes.
Right. So as long as we are alive, we will have to deal with these challenges.
Absolutely.
Different human beings coming from different backgrounds, and yes, this is there, and it's a lifelong struggle to try to get as close as possible to Islam. But I would like to take the chance to jump quickly to another side that has to do very much with this, the struggle that's going on inside of America, especially for the Black Muslims, and we're talking about the Black History Month right now. So we know historically Muslims have been there. They were with Columbus, Christopher Columbus, and even before. So it's very important element, an essential element of the formation of this society. What happened? Where did we lie right now? What did we end up doing right now? The climate in America right now, the injustice, the racial injustice. Brother Nazim, mashallah, you have a passion for history, mashallah. Talk to us about this, the history, and getting to that point where America is right now. And let me just share this with you. This incident happened 2 hours ago in front of my house. I live in a not very fancy, not very low, like medium kind of neighborhood. And all of a sudden it turned into an action movie or something, right? All of these police cars like wee, 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 wee. And what, how many cars were there, Muhammad? Like 5, 6 cars. And I thought we are raided or something. Anyways, it was very interesting that I had to videotape it. And I have not seen anything like this before. And I thought there's something really crazy going on. And I had to get my kids and try to make sure they are safe. Because they didn't know what's going on. They ended up, all of these people, and I'm here just saying what happened, what I saw with my eyes. They ended up having to pull this young girl, African-American, right, from a car. And I was very interested to know what's going on. That's very dangerous to have all of that scene turning into a movie in front of, or a scene in front of my eyes. And they got her handcuffed and all of that, and having all of these guns. I've seen all of these huge guns. Several minutes it was unfolding. And then later, half an hour later, I just came to know that she had, was it a BB gun, or I think it was some kind of little, Yeah, it was a paintball gun in her car. And then one of the other neighbors, even though California, I've seen, is so nice and so tolerant, but for some reason, that neighbor, who also came and told me everything, and he looks very nice guy. I don't know, I cannot tell, what people are thinking, but he had to call the police when he saw what it looks like, a gun for him, and all of these police people came. But wallahi, my wife was telling me, I knew this girl, this is too much. There is exaggeration. She looks to me like, it should not be that much. I also understand the police situation, because it could be somebody who is carrying a gun in a neighborhood that could be endangering. So where did we end up being right now as Americans? Starting from the history up to here, Brother Nazi, quickly, if you don't mind.
Well, this has been the case since blacks tried to get away from slavery. They hunt you down. And that was the reason for a lot of the police forces, because they were always trying to hunt down slaves and then put you back in your place, drag you in chains and wherever else, just like you had the police officers in Texas, they were riding the horses and had the guy who detained in chains walking between the horses, or behind the horses. A lot of the police in America are trained by the Israelis, who, as you know, they're pretty rough with the Palestinians. You can't get any rougher than that. But I tell you, you just have to be careful in America, because a lot of people don't know how to live in the society without having to experience some adverse impact of the police, or even the crime in general. It's going to come and get you wherever you go. But the thing is that that's going to be one of the biggest challenges of this nation, is the people. if the people have any character, and they not going to get it from, the Democratic Party or the Republican Party or whatever else. They're not going to get it from Christianity now, but they're going to have to find their way. And it's on the Muslims now to really show that humanity and to show the character, wherever they are and whatever fields they work in, whatever. But yeah, it's rough now. You have to be very careful, and it's not going to get easier.
Not going to get better.
No, it's not.
Okay, is it?
And then they're gonna find some new, pardon my language, new niggers to get. They get rid of one bottom up thorn and they get another. They're already doing it to the Latinos. But wait till it becomes the Muslims.
Brother Ibrahim, what do you
Yes.
think about Biden coming to office and Kamala Harris and all of them, and Democrats in general with their policy? You see some hope in there for change?
That's a loaded question. Actually, I don't have for the U.S. democracy, the U.S. system of democracy has some benefits, but it also has a lot of flaws. Number one, unfortunately, since the presidency of Barack Obama, the U.S. political climate, particularly between the party system, has become one of power grabbing more than really working for the people. And it's actually been like that for centuries. President Eisenhower spoke against the danger of corporate interests interfering with government. This was back in his presidency ended in 1960. Okay, so I mean, this whole problem of business getting involved with politics is an issue, and it's over the last 4 years it's really shown it's real negative impact. The current president, we wish the president well, but not because he's who he is. We wish him well because he has a mandate to serve the American people, and people need to understand that the presidency, the whole United States government is supposed to serve the American people. And the challenge has been that they serve some parts but don't serve others. And this so there's always hope. And the issues of Vice President Harris being who and what she is also raises hope. But see, as Nazir pointed out, America has all of these things. If you're first there's white and black, and then there's man and woman, and then there's adult and child, and then now you have gender issues. You have all of these challenges in America, and then you have us as Muslims trying to tell people, look, there's a straighter path that's really not complicated. And it brings together this hadith of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So he drew the line in the sand, and he drew the line to the side, and he said, you have all these, but this is the straight path. And there's just, the U.S. society is just so much confused, even among us as Muslims. How conservative should we be? How liberal should we be? How understanding should we be? How tolerant should we be? But if we're not firmly grounded in just our relationship with Allah, we won't be able to answer those questions. And we need that type of leadership, as Nazir mentioned, leadership that is born out of the U.S. society, leadership that has come, like yourself, Imam Amar, who has come and actually made yourself part of this society and become part of the culture of the society. Until this leadership becomes firm, and we have many more struggles we have to go through. I remember in Durham, when you're in Durham, and I've seen that even in Richmond, the mosque in Richmond, one thing that Muslims do is to serve other people, regardless of whether or not they're Muslim. Having food lines, having the Ramadan campaigns where you're serving. These things are important. So you're getting back to the government. the government is going to do what it's going to do, but it's where we are with the people is really, really more important.
That's right. So maybe the Jim Crow laws ended as far as, you know, the political.
Yeah, but they're still in the hearts.
There is, you know, as far as the reality, it might be different.
Yes.
We will have to continue to work on getting better as Muslims and getting better as Americans and getting better as humans in general. And I like to highlight what you said at the end is by coming closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's exactly what I was talking about in the khutbah today. When we make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the center of our life, as the focal, you know, aspect of our life, then I think all of these things, issues that we have in life will just be solved automatically.
Inshallah.
I would like to take a couple of questions. If we have any questions from the brothers here, do you? Otherwise, I have a question from a sister. It came online. She said, how was it being Black Muslim and hijabi too for the sisters?
You have to ask the wives on that. I'm sorry. I know my limitations. You know, you have to.
They're very brave.
Yes, they are. More brave than the men.
They exhibit a lot of bravery.
Yeah.
A lot of bravery.
So we can take our kufis off, but you know the sisters, they continue with their hijabs.
You're not going to be recognized as Muslims, but we have those struggles for us Muslims and for us Americans as well. And I think the solution begins by talking about these things, and that's what we have done. And I would like to thank you very much for the time and for sharing the experiences. Inshallah, tabarak wa ta'ala, jazakumullahu khairan for your time.
Barakallahu feekum. Alhamdulillah.
Bless you. We will keep talking about the Black history and our legacy as Muslims and as Americans, inshallah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us solution for all of our struggles. Allahumma ameen. Thank you. And jazakumullahu khair. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalam.